I've always had a love of comics. When I was a kid, it was the cartoon shows with comic book characters, and occasionally at a convenience store I would get a comic. But it wasn't until around the age of 13 or 14 I started getting into them seriously, going to some of the local comic stores and actually having favorite titles I couldn't wait to get each month. Oh man, I have to come back for more. It's like the old movie serials, you know. It's like they left off. I can't wait until next month. And since that time of about 13 or so, I have always wanted to be involved with comics. I wanted to draw them or tell stories. And my friend Richard Perez and I, it'll be 30 years that I met him next year. We met in high school, and ironically, our first meeting involved Rich coming to me because he had stories he wanted to tell. And he asked me if I would like to draw these stories. Unfortunately, my self-esteem issues were not high at the time. I liked to draw, but at my own pace in my own little world. Didn't think my stuff was good enough to go any further. So I I told Rich that I work alone. And he thought I was one stuck-up guy. He thought I was snubbing him. He didn't realize that it was just confidence issues. And here it is, almost 30 years later, and we are working together. As in fact, in high school, we did some comic strips of our own, just to entertain ourselves in classes. And I guess, in a little bit of foreshadowing, um, people would see me doodling these comics that Rich and I were working on in school, making fun of our classmates and ourselves, just having fun. And people wanted more and more. What'd you guys do today? What'd you guys do today? At the time, we had no idea that what we were developing as a friendship back then and a partnership would pay off so many years later. It is when Rich has a new story and he's explaining to me, I get it intuitively. I have figured it out just like that. Now, that was how we met back then. Flash forward some 26, 27 years, and Richard was helping another writer in developing a book called How to Avoid Deadly Social Network Attacks Online, computer viruses and things like that. Now, Rich had long had this idea he had several ideas on writing comics. And he had these stories, these great stories, but he wasn't sure what to do with them. He came up with The Sin of the Dead back in the 80s, before it had a title. And every so often he would tweak it and add to it. The Sin of the Dead is about it takes place 175 years in the future. And in a nod to George Romero, it is a black and white book, but it also picks up after, say, the zombie outbreak of 1968 in George Romero's movie. Not directly, but using that as a mental jumping off point. We made sure that the technology was relatively dated, that as the zombie apocalypse, the zombies wound up taking over the planet for the most part, and people were an endangered species. So technology has been kind of slowed. And so even though it's 175 years in the future, you'll see things that are like the equivalent of early 80s or 1990s type of technology. And globally, in pockets of humanity that are left, the human race decided to start fighting back and creating these zombie squads, if you will, these rapid response teams whenever they find out about a zombie outbreak. And these guys go in and they're boogeymen for the zombies. They go in and they're taking out the zombies, taking care of business. When everyone else is running away, these guys are running too. And the group that we focus on is the Tango team. Also, they give us the name of our company, Tango Unlimited. Fran Pinovic, our artist on The Sin of the Dead, came up with the logo for it after a painting he had done some time before he met us. And Fran Pinovic and I work very well together. But because I've known Rich so long, as I read Rich's scripts, as I know what he's looking for, Fran kind of has a problem visualizing some of the things that Rich is looking for. So therefore, I do concept designs, and then I'll do a first draft for Fran. I'll do a first draft, I work closely with him, and then once he's done his draft, his final draft, I go over it in ink. Rich, Fran, and I will go over the dialogue, and we'll send it off to the printer, and the book is published. That's how that's come about. And like I said, Rich and I work very well hand in hand.
And these are pretty well received here at the shows. They're starting to take off.
Oh, definitely. When we premiered Descent of the Dead #1 in 2010 at the Rosemont's WizardCon, that's the annual Comic Con in the Midwest, these books are very well received because zombies are very much in at the moment, you know. And we realize we only have a limited amount of time before zombies might be out of fashion again. So we have a story we're telling, and it should run about 7 issues. We're up to our 4th issue. We plan to be wrapping up Descent of the Dead by next year, and we might have 1 or 2 offshoot solo stories that we are planning for that as well. But the fans really respond to zombies, and the things that we've gotten are very complimentary, because we'll hear things like, it's so cinematic. Even though you're reading it, it plays more like a movie. The pacing is incredible, and just when you think you know where it's going, it takes a turn. And that was our aim, because Rich and I in particular are huge fans of comics, and so we've read all these different genres. We know the cliches. We wanted to give the public something different. You know, we put ourselves in the public's shoes. This is what I would want to see in a comic. This is something I would like to pull me in, but to challenge me as a reader too, or not to insult my intelligence. So that's what comes off in our Descent of the Dead.